Captain Lisa "Lightning" Morgan stood at the edge of the tarmac at Ramstein Air Base, watching the storm clouds gather on the horizon like dark omens. The weather briefing had been ominous. A massive storm system was approaching with winds gusting up to 80 knots, zero visibility, and the kind of turbulence that could tear apart aircraft not designed to handle such punishment. At 28, she had already logged over 2,000 flight hours in various military aircraft, but tonight would test every skill she had learned during her 8-year career as an Air Force pilot. The mission briefing had been tense. Intelligence indicated that a Navy SEAL team was trapped behind enemy lines in Syria, their extraction window closing rapidly as hostile forces converged on their position. The original rescue helicopter had been shot down, and conventional aircraft couldn't reach the mountainous terrain where the team was hiding. Only one aircraft in the inventory had the combination of speed, maneuverability, and stealth capabilities necessary for the mission: the V-22 Osprey, a tilt-rotor aircraft that could take off like a helicopter and fly like an airplane. But Colonel James Mitchell, the mission commander, had serious reservations about the pilot assignment. As Lisa entered the briefing room in her flight suit, helmet under her arm, the colonel's expression shifted from professional concern to barely concealed skepticism. He had specifically requested Captain Jake "Maverick" Thompson, one of the squadron's most experienced pilots, for what everyone understood would be a suicide mission in anything but perfect conditions. "Captain Morgan," Colonel Mitchell said, his voice carrying the weight of command and decades of military experience, "I think there's been some confusion. This mission requires our most experienced pilot. Where's Thompson?" Lisa straightened, her jaw set with determination that had carried her through every challenge of her military career. "Sir, Captain Thompson is grounded with a concussion from yesterday's training accident. I'm the next qualified pilot available for V-22 operations." The colonel's laugh was short and sharp, lacking any humor. "Captain, this isn't a training exercise or a routine transport mission. We're talking about flying into hostile territory during the worst storm system we've seen in months. The SEAL team is counting on precision flying in conditions that would challenge our most seasoned pilots." The words stung because Lisa had heard variations of them throughout her career. Despite graduating at the top of her flight school class, accumulating more flight hours than most of her male counterparts, and consistently receiving superior ratings on every performance evaluation, she still faced the assumption that challenging missions required male pilots. The doubt wasn't always spoken aloud, but it was there in the careful way commanders assigned missions, in the surprised expressions when she performed exceptionally, and in comments like the colonel's that questioned her readiness for dangerous assignments. Lisa's path to this moment had begun in rural Montana, where her father ran a small charter flight service from a grass airstrip behind their family home. From the age of 8, she had spent weekends and summers helping with aircraft maintenance, learning the fundamentals of flight operations, and eventually earning her private pilot's license before she could legally drive a car. Her father, a former Air Force pilot himself, had encouraged her aviation interests while warning her about the challenges she would face as a woman in military aviation. "Flying doesn't care whether you're male or female," he would tell her as they worked together on aircraft engines. "But people do, and you'll have to be twice as good as anyone else to get half the recognition. The question is whether you're willing to pay that price to do what you love." The price had been steep from the beginning. At the Air Force Academy, Lisa faced instructors who questioned whether women belonged in combat aircraft, classmates who assumed she had received special treatment because of her gender, and a culture that often seemed determined to prove that women lacked the physical and mental toughness for military aviation. She responded by outworking everyone around her, studying longer, training harder, and never allowing herself to show weakness or doubt even when the pressure seemed overwhelming. Flight school had been even more challenging. The attrition rate was deliberately high, designed to eliminate pilots who couldn't handle the stress of military aviation. Lisa not only survived but excelled, earning recognition as the outstanding graduate of her class while accumulating flight hours in increasingly complex aircraft. Her instructor pilots noted her exceptional spatial awareness, precise aircraft control, and ability to remain calm under pressure, qualities that were essential for military aviation but often overlooked when commanders focused on perceived physical limitations. Her first assignment had been flying transport aircraft, a typical posting for new pilots that allowed them to build experience while supporting military operations worldwide. Lisa threw herself into the work, volunteering for challenging missions and gradually building a reputation as a pilot who could be trusted with difficult assignments. She flew humanitarian relief missions into disaster areas, transported special operations teams to remote locations, and conducted medical evacuations under hostile fire. But despite her growing experience and proven capabilities, Lisa found herself consistently passed over for the high-profile missions that defined military aviation careers. Colleagues with less experience and lower performance ratings were selected for combat assignments while she remained in support roles. The message was clear. She was considered competent for routine operations but not trusted with missions where lives hung in the balance. The opportunity to transition to V-22 Osprey operations had represented a chance to break through the barriers that had limited her career advancement. The Osprey was one of the most challenging aircraft in the military inventory, requiring pilots to master both helicopter and airplane flying techniques while operating complex systems that pushed the boundaries of aviation technology. The training program had a high washout rate, and successful completion virtually guaranteed assignment to high-priority missions with Special Operations Forces. Lisa had approached Osprey training with the same methodical preparation that had characterized her entire career. She studied aircraft systems until she could troubleshoot problems in her sleep, practiced emergency procedures until her responses became instinctive, and logged countless hours in simulators that replicated every conceivable failure scenario. When she graduated from the program, her instructor pilots rated her among the top 5% of pilots they had trained, but she still found herself assigned primarily to training and transport missions. Tonight's mission had become available only because of the training accident that grounded Captain Thompson. As the squadron's duty pilot, Lisa was technically qualified and available, but Colonel Mitchell's reluctance was obvious. He spent several minutes reviewing her qualifications, questioning her experience in adverse weather conditions, and expressing concerns about whether she could handle the psychological pressure of a combat rescue mission. "Sir," Lisa said finally, her voice steady despite the frustration building inside her, "I have over 400 hours in the V-22, including 50 hours of instrument time in severe weather conditions. My last 3 performance evaluations rated me as exceptional in all categories. The SEAL team doesn't have time for us to debate pilot assignments while they're under fire." The mission intelligence briefing painted a grim picture. The 6-man SEAL team had been conducting reconnaissance on a terrorist training facility when their position was compromised. During their extraction, the helicopter had been hit by enemy fire and crashed in a remote mountain valley, killing both pilots and leaving the SEALs stranded with limited ammunition and no immediate prospect of rescue. Enemy forces were converging on their position, and intelligence estimates suggested they had perhaps 4 hours before being overrun. The rescue plan was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its complexity. Lisa would fly the Osprey into the valley at night, during a major storm without air support or backup. She would have to navigate through mountainous terrain using only instruments, avoid enemy air defenses, locate the SEAL team in zero visibility conditions, and extract them while under hostile fire. The margin for error was essentially zero. Any mistake would likely result in the deaths of the rescue crew and the stranded SEALs. Weather conditions were deteriorating rapidly as the mission timeline compressed. The storm system was moving faster than predicted, bringing with it the kind of severe turbulence, icing conditions, and electrical activity that made military aviation extremely dangerous even under the best circumstances. Several other aircraft had already been grounded due to weather, and the window for launching the rescue mission was closing rapidly. "Captain Morgan," Colonel Mitchell said after reviewing the latest weather updates, "I want to be very clear about what you're walking into. This storm system is producing Category 5 turbulence with severe icing conditions above 8,000 feet. You'll be flying through mountain passes with ceilings below minimums and visibility near zero. The enemy has shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles, and they know we're coming." Lisa nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation while feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanied dangerous flying. "Sir, the Osprey is designed for exactly this type of mission. I've trained for these conditions and I'm confident in my ability to complete the extraction successfully." The colonel studied her for a long moment, perhaps weighing his skepticism about female pilots against the urgent need to rescue the stranded SEALs. Finally, he made his decision with obvious reluctance. "All right, Captain Morgan. It's your mission. But understand that 6 American lives are depending on your flying skills tonight. Don't let them down." The pre-flight inspection was conducted under increasingly difficult conditions as the storm approached Ramstein Air Base. Lisa methodically checked every system on the complex aircraft, paying particular attention to the weather radar, navigation equipment, and defensive systems that would be crucial for the mission. The Osprey's twin rotors could tilt from horizontal to vertical positions, allowing it to take off like a helicopter and transition to forward flight like an airplane, a capability that made it uniquely suited for special operations missions. Her crew for the mission consisted of Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, a flight engineer with extensive special operations experience, and Technical Sergeant Mike Johnson, a pararescue specialist trained in combat medicine and helicopter operations. Both had initially expressed surprise when they learned their pilot would be Captain Morgan rather than one of the squadron's more senior male pilots, but they maintained professional attitudes while preparing for what everyone understood would be an extremely dangerous mission. "Ma'am," Sergeant Santos said as they completed the pre-flight checklist, "I've flown with most of the pilots in this squadron, and I want you to know that your reputation for precise flying precedes you. The crew has complete confidence in your abilities." The vote of confidence meant more to Lisa than she could express. Crew confidence was essential for special operations missions, where split-second decisions and precise coordination could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. She had worked hard to earn the respect of the enlisted aircrew members who were the backbone of military aviation operations. As they taxied toward the active runway, the storm's advance elements began to affect aircraft operations. Wind gusts were already approaching 40 knots, and light rain was beginning to fall across the airfield. The control tower reported deteriorating conditions throughout the region, with several civilian airports already closed due to severe weather. "Lightning 1, you are cleared for takeoff," came the voice of the air traffic controller. "Be advised that weather conditions are continuing to deteriorate. We're showing severe turbulence reports from all altitudes along your route." Lisa advanced the throttles, feeling the Osprey's powerful engines respond as the aircraft began its takeoff roll. The transition from helicopter to airplane mode was smooth and precise, a testament to both the aircraft's engineering and her mastery of its complex flight characteristics. As they climbed away from Ramstein, the lights of the air base quickly disappeared behind them into the gathering darkness. The flight toward the Syrian border was conducted entirely on instruments as cloud cover blocked any visual references. Lisa flew with the focused concentration that characterized her approach to challenging aviation, constantly monitoring weather radar, navigation displays, and threat warning systems while maintaining precise altitude and heading control. The storm system was massive, covering hundreds of square miles with violent weather that would challenge even the most experienced pilots. Turbulence began to affect the aircraft as they approached the storm's outer bands. The Osprey bucked and rolled through updrafts and downdrafts that could throw an aircraft thousands of feet off altitude in seconds. Lisa's hands moved constantly across the flight controls, making the subtle adjustments necessary to maintain stable flight while her crew prepared for the challenging extraction ahead. "Captain, we're picking up ice on the leading edges," Sergeant Santos reported from her position at the flight engineer station. "Anti-ice systems are activated and functioning normally." Icing was one of the most dangerous conditions in aviation, capable of adding thousands of pounds of weight to an aircraft while disrupting the airflow over wings and control surfaces. The Osprey's anti-ice systems were designed to handle moderate icing conditions, but the storm system they were penetrating was producing ice accumulation rates that pushed the aircraft to its operational limits. As they crossed into Syrian airspace, the tactical situation became increasingly complex. Intelligence updates indicated that enemy forces were actively searching for the stranded SEAL team while also preparing air defenses to counter any rescue attempt. Lisa would have to navigate not only through severe weather but also through a hostile environment where surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft artillery posed constant threats. The mountain valley where the SEALs were located was surrounded by peaks rising above 10,000 feet, creating a natural fortress that provided protection from ground forces but also trapped weather systems and created extreme turbulence. Lisa began her descent into the valley flying entirely on instruments, with visibility reduced to near zero by heavy rain and low clouds. "Lightning 1, this is Rescue Team 6, came the voice of the SEAL team leader over the encrypted radio. "We have enemy forces approximately 800 meters from our position and closing. Request immediate extraction." The urgency in the SEAL's voice was unmistakable. Lisa could hear automatic weapons fire in the background of the radio transmission, indicating that the team was already under attack. She increased her rate of descent, pushing the Osprey to its operational limits while navigating through the narrow mountain valley in zero visibility conditions. Suddenly, the aircraft was hit by the most severe turbulence Lisa had ever experienced. The Osprey was thrown violently upward, then slammed downward with forces that strained the aircraft's structure and threatened to tear it apart. Warning lights illuminated across the instrument panel as various systems struggled to cope with the extreme conditions. "Jesus Christ!" Sergeant Johnson exclaimed as he was thrown against his restraints. "What the hell was that?" "Mountain wave turbulence," Lisa replied through gritted teeth, fighting to maintain control as the aircraft continued to be buffeted by extreme winds. The storm is being channeled through the valley, creating downdrafts that could slam us into the ground. She had trained for these conditions in simulators, but the reality was far more intense than any training scenario. The Osprey was being thrown around like a toy, its sophisticated flight control system struggling to maintain stability as conflicting air currents tried to tear the aircraft apart. Lesser pilots might have attempted to climb out of the valley and abort the mission, but Lisa understood that the SEALs had no other hope of rescue. Using every bit of her flying skill and experience, Lisa managed to stabilize the aircraft's descent while continuing to navigate toward the extraction point. The weather radar showed the storm system intensifying, with embedded thunderstorms producing lightning strikes that could damage aircraft systems or cause catastrophic structural failure. Lightning 1, be advised that we have visual contact with hostile forces approaching from the north, the SEAL team leader reported. We need immediate extraction or we'll be overrun within minutes. Lisa could see the extraction point on her navigation display, still 3 miles away through terrain that rose sharply on both sides of the narrow valley. She would have to maintain precise navigation while flying through turbulence that was pushing the Osprey beyond its design limitations, all while avoiding enemy fire and the constant threat of controlled flight into terrain. The descent into the valley became a masterclass in precision flying under impossible conditions. Lisa used every available navigation aid while making constant adjustments for the extreme winds that were pushing the aircraft off course. Her crew called out altitude and distance information while monitoring for threats that could appear without warning in the zero visibility conditions. At 500 feet above the valley floor, Lisa finally broke through the cloud deck and could see the terrain below illuminated by lightning strikes that revealed the stark beauty and deadly danger of the mountainous landscape. The SEAL team's position was marked by an infrared strobe that was visible only through night vision equipment, a tiny beacon of hope in a landscape that seemed determined to kill everyone involved in the rescue attempt. The landing zone was smaller than a football field, surrounded by rocks and steep terrain that left no margin for error. Lisa transitioned the Osprey from forward flight to helicopter mode while dealing with downdrafts that tried to slam the aircraft into the ground and crosswinds that threatened to push them into the surrounding rocks. 50 feet, coming down fast, Sergeant Santos called out, providing the altitude information that Lisa needed to judge her approach in the poor visibility conditions. 20 feet, still descending. 10 feet, 5 feet, we're down. The moment the Osprey touched the rocky ground, the SEAL team emerged from concealment and began moving toward the aircraft. Lisa could see muzzle flashes in the distance where enemy forces were engaging the team's rear guard, and tracer rounds began to streak through the air around the landing zone. We're taking fire from multiple directions, Sergeant Johnson reported as he prepared to provide covering fire for the boarding SEALs. Small arms and what looks like RPGs from the ridgeline. Lisa kept the engines running and the rotors turning, ready for immediate takeoff once all personnel were aboard. The 6 SEALs moved with the professional efficiency of elite soldiers, carrying their wounded comrade while maintaining defensive positions around the aircraft. Enemy fire was intensifying, with bullets striking the Osprey's armored hull and creating sparks that were visible even through the storm. All personnel aboard, the SEAL team leader shouted over the noise of the engines and hostile fire. Go, go, go. Lisa pulled collective pitch and applied forward pressure to the cyclic controls, lifting the overloaded aircraft off the ground while transitioning back to forward flight mode. The takeoff was conducted under fire, with enemy tracers creating deadly light shows around the aircraft as hostile forces attempted to shoot down the rescue mission. Climbing out of the valley required all of Lisa's flying skills as she navigated through the same severe turbulence that had challenged the inbound flight. The aircraft was now heavier with the additional personnel, making it more difficult to control in the extreme weather conditions. Lightning strikes illuminated the mountain peaks around them, creating a surreal landscape that was both beautiful and terrifying. Lightning 1, this is Rescue Team 6 leader, came the voice of the senior SEAL over the intercom. Ma'am, that was some of the finest flying I've ever witnessed. You saved our lives tonight. The flight back to friendly territory was conducted through continuing severe weather, but Lisa's confidence had grown with the successful completion of the most challenging part of the mission. She flew with the precision and calm professionalism that had characterized her entire career, delivering the rescued SEALs safely to a forward operating base where medical personnel were waiting to treat the wounded team member. As the Osprey touched down at the forward base, Colonel Mitchell was waiting on the flight line. His expression had changed dramatically from the skepticism he had shown during the mission briefing. The successful rescue of the SEAL team under impossible weather conditions had demonstrated flying skills that even the most experienced pilots would have struggled to match. "Captain Morgan," the colonel said as Lisa climbed down from the cockpit, "that was extraordinary flying. I owe you an apology for doubting your capabilities." The words of recognition meant more to Lisa than any medal or award could have. She had proven not only her own flying abilities but also that gender was irrelevant when it came to the skills and courage required for military aviation. The successful mission would become a turning point in her career, opening doors to the challenging assignments that she had always known she was capable of handling. In the months that followed, Lisa was assigned to increasingly complex special operations missions, building a reputation as one of the finest pilots in the Air Force. Her success paved the way for other female pilots to receive similar opportunities, gradually breaking down the barriers that had limited women's participation in combat aviation. The storm that had nearly killed everyone involved in the rescue mission became a defining moment not just in Lisa's career but in the ongoing evolution of military aviation. Her performance under impossible conditions demonstrated that excellence in flying had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with skill, preparation, and the courage to perform when lives hung in the balance. Years later, when young female pilots faced their own skeptics and challenges, they would point to Captain Lisa Lightning Morgan's storm flight as proof that determination and competence could overcome any prejudice. The colonel who had once laughed at the sight of a woman entering the cockpit became one of her strongest advocates, using her story as an example of why the military's best interests were served when assignments were based on ability rather than assumptions. The night she flew into the storm alone and emerged with 6 rescued SEALs had proven that sometimes the most dangerous missions require not the biggest or strongest pilots, but simply the best ones. And on that stormy night in Syria, the best pilot available happened to be a woman who refused to let anyone else's limitations define her own capabilities.